Hi there everyone, welcome to this week's video where we're going to be talking about Descartes and the Cogito, or you could otherwise say Descartes and the Cogito argument. Where we left off last time was at the end of Meditation 1, after Descartes has introduced his three skeptical arguments that he thinks undermines the entire edifice of knowledge of his times. The first argument being the argument from illusion, the second argument being the argument from dreams, and the third and final argument being the evil genius argument. The first two components of Descartes' argument lead him to cast doubt on all empirical or experiential knowledge. So physics, astronomy, biology, all of the natural sciences, these are all endeavors or sciences where we come to know things through the enterprise of experience, right? How do we know, for example, how far a rock is going to be thrown by a certain amount of momentum? Well, we conduct an experiment, right? We learn from our experiences. But the evil genius argument is even more powerful than that, because it leads us not only to doubt experiential knowledge, as for example the disciplines like I mentioned, and astronomy and so on, but also even a priori sciences, such as arithmetic and geometry. At this point, Descartes fears that, he's decimated all of the available options for our knowledge and is despondent at the possibility that maybe knowledge isn't possible for human beings at all. But Descartes does not linger in this despair for very long, for he quickly discovers an intellectual truth, a truth that is an immediate truth, and it's also what he calls an Archimedean point for his entire philosophical system, that we are going to understand as the Cogito argument. Now, Descartes' strategy is to find an item of knowledge that is immune even to his evil genius argument. And here is where he arrives at, as we said, the Cogito argument. The Cogito argument is often summarized as, I think, therefore I am. And understanding the meaning of this phrase is going to take some unpacking. Descartes' basic point is that it's conceivable, for example, that I am wrong about my own self-understanding, right? It's possible that maybe I'm not a human being. Maybe I'm an alien species who doesn't recognize herself as such. Maybe I'm really a robot or an artificial intelligence program that is designed to think that it's human, and so on. But what I can't be wrong about, what neither my dreams nor the evil demon could ever deceive me with respect to, is the fact that I am a thinking thing. In other words, I might be wrong about being human, and this is an idea that we'll explore in more detail in just a moment, but I can't be wrong that I'm thinking, because even in the situation where I'm deceived, I am still a thinking thing. Now, I've written up here three characteristics that Descartes uses to describe the Cogito. The first is that it's an intellectual truth. And I've written here, aka a priori. What this means is that we come to know the Cogito, as I was saying, not experientially. It's not as if we are going about our experiences, our everyday life, and then we discover something that we had never considered before, that thing being the Cogito. Instead, the Cogito is an intellectual truth. In other words, it's the sort of thing like geometry or mathematics that I can know simply through my own reason. It's a fundamental fact that anytime I'm thinking anything, I also thereby recognize myself as that thing that thinks that, right? So in other words, whenever I think I'm on an island, or if I think I'm a computer program or not, there is that thing, me, the most fundamental sense of myself, that is that thinking thing. So in saying that this is an a priori argument, Descartes means to say it's something that you can know that is true regardless of you having experienced anything at all. It's true even if this is the first moment of your conscious awareness. I think, therefore I am. And does not rely on any experimentation or experiential knowledge whatsoever. It is, moreover, an immediate truth. In other words, it's a truth that's not true through anything else. You might already know that, for example, philosophical arguments are often complex demonstrations where you have a certain number of premises that the philosopher takes to be true and then argues from these premises to certain kinds of conclusions. And the conclusions in these arguments only follow insofar as the premises are true. Now, in saying that the cogito is an immediate truth, Descartes is trying to signal that it's not like that. And I've given you a small fragment from the Principles of Philosophy where he says something to this effect. Namely, that the cogito argument isn't a syllogism that says something like, all things that think exist, I think, therefore I exist, right? That's a natural way of reading the cogito argument. But if that were the case, then really, more fundamentally than the cogito would be this metaphysical principle that anything that thinks exists. But Descartes, at least on his own self-understanding, wants to say that that's not how the cogito argument works. It's not that you know some external principle and then you apply that principle to yourself. To the contrary, the cogito argument is meant to establish the immediate knowledge of your own existence in virtue of being that thing that thinks. This is why Descartes' cogito argument defeats the evil genius, whereas arithmetic and geometry and other metaphysical arguments do not, right? The evil genius can confuse you in terms of your calculations or what you think are the consequences of the argument you've given. But because the cogito doesn't rely on anything else being true, it's an immediate truth, and therefore not the sort of thing that the evil genius could ever conceivably deceive you about. So because it's not true through anything else, it's not a conclusion that relies on certain premises, it in fact is a kind of self-authorizing truth. It's something that you can come to know and discover for yourself simply by reflecting on the necessary structure of your experiences. In order for there to be experiences, there has to be the thing that is experiencing it, right? And that's what Descartes means by the cogito. Finally, Descartes refers to the cogito argument quite famously as an Archimedean point. And what he means by this is that it's a foundation for further truths. Hopefully you can see how these three characteristics are related. It can only be an immediate truth because it's an intellectual truth. And it can only be an Archimedean point because it's an immediate truth. What do I mean by this? Well, I mean that the reason why the cogito argument is a suitable foundation for the rest of Descartes' philosophical system is because it is the rock bottom, the most certain item of our knowledge that we can possibly reach. It is our most immediate truth. And it is only because of this immediacy that it can serve as a viable foundation for Descartes to build on for the remainder of his philosophical system. Now, it's important to recognize that the cogito argument does not prove that everything that I think about myself is correct, right? So perhaps, for example, I think that I have brown hair, but it might turn out that I'm dreaming, and then I end up having platinum hair or red hair or, you know, whatever you like, green hair, if you want to go there, right? So it's important to recognize that the I that exists is not me qua Penelope, the human being who has an assortment of characteristics that I come to know through experience. That still, according to the strict nature of Descartes' method, is doubtful. And so it's not the sort of thing that, as we said, he can build his philosophical system upon. This introduces a kind of distinction between seeming and being that we can roughly think of as the distinction between something that's immanent to your experience or something that transcends your experience. What do I mean by this? I mean simply this. It's possible to doubt that I am a human being for exactly those reasons I was just mentioning. I could wake up and discover I'm some other kind of being. I could have been an alien that was simply told I was a human being. I could be a program that is programmed to believe that I'm a human, and so on, right? So it's not certain that I'm a human being, but it is certain that I am a thinking thing. Descartes' term for this that we're going to discuss in more detail in our videos next week is res cogitans. In other words, the deepest aspect of myself, the most enduring and essential aspect of myself, is not myself as a human being, but instead myself as a thinking thing. That's what I ultimately discover from the Cogito, is that it belongs to my essential nature to be a thinking thing, and it is an inessential contingent characteristic of myself as a thinking thing that I also experience myself as a human being that has a body and is part of the species Homo sapiens, and so on. To really clarify this idea, we're going to have to get more in depth on Descartes' distinction between thinking substances and material substances, and that will be one of our foremost topics for next week. I hope that this video has been helpful to you, and I very much look forward to hearing what you have to say. Next week we'll explore both Descartes' epistemology, so his theory of knowledge, and specifically his doctrine of clear and distinct ideas, as well as his famous dualism between extended and thinking substances. I look forward to hearing what you have to say, and I will see you next week.